I'm Trey Henry. I am the programmer, I guess, for Mosaic. I also wrote Urania, which is astrology software, and Georatio, which is geomancy software. And I'm here with my magical bestie, Heather Freeman.
Hey, and
And
I was the artist, I guess, on Mosaic, and I've done a bunch of podcasts and art stuff for my job.
right on.
Don't make me laugh. All right. So in Mosaic, there's 50 tiles, and they're each split in half, and then shuffled, and then recombined, and that becomes the basis for your reading.
So one of the things that we wanted to do with Mosaic was to not just have a computer's random number generator produce a random array of things, but to actually have an interaction with the user, which would is a physics-based interaction in Mosaic, but gives you something akin to sort of shuffling cards or some sort of predictive sortilege.
So each card and background can take on a particular elemental association. These are using sort of your standard Western esoteric colors: green for earth, yellow for air, a reddish orange for fire, and blue for water.
So Mosaic is currently in beta. We're releasing it to the world so that anybody can play with it and have a good time with it. But it's probably a little rough around the edges and it might have some bugs or other issues. And there is a feedback mechanism, which Heather put together a very beautiful feedback form, so that you can provide us with any issues or any things that you would like to see or just to provide feedback. So the first time that you launch Mosaic, you will need to consecrate it before you can actually cast a chart with it. And consecration is a way of making this instance of Mosaic uniquely yours. You will be prompted to provide an image in a specific format, which will be a sort of indicator tile or a custom tile. We'll only provide 49 tiles out of the 50 tile set, and you provide the 50th.
In most divination systems, you usually consecrate a new deck of cards or a new set of tiles. And the same thing is true in a digital context. So in this case, you're going to be consecrating this deck to yourself and your own purposes with this unique 50th tile.
To provide the 50th tile for Mosaic and to go through this consecration workflow within the application, you need to drag and drop a 1024 by 1024 PNG image. For the beta, this is very specific, so you will need to crop or modify your image to exactly fit these specifications. Later on, we might provide some easier mechanisms for putting the image in here, but it's very specific for right now. I'm going to drop an image of Heather and I, and you can see that it gives you a preview of what the tile will look like. You may also provide a custom name and description. And you may also select if you wish to have the image be tinted based on the elemental association. The name that you provide will also be used to seed a random number generator, which will be used to form charts initially. And this will make more sense once we get into the actual chart casting itself.
So in this case, we're using a photographic image and there's not an alpha channel. But if you're an artist and you like working with alpha channels and you want to create your own drawings for this, you can absolutely do this. In this case, you would make a image with a transparent background, for example. And if you made that image black and white, anything that's white is going to take that foreground elemental color if you check that tint based on element box.
Heather and I have picked a question to do a demonstration of Mosaic, something that's timely and in the news. And our question is, what does the world need to know about Twitter in 2023? We think that this will be an interesting area for us to examine. After you go through this consecration flow of putting in your image, creating a name, creating a description, you'll click on the Consecrate and Cast Chart button. And every time you cast a chart in Mosaic, you'll have a few seconds to see the tiles as they are randomly placed. And then the tiles will be hidden and you will go into the shuffling of the tiles. So there's the few seconds that you get to see the chart. And now we're in the shuffling mode. Simply click and drag to drag the moon puck around the chart. And in this way, you can shuffle the tiles. And the tile shuffling, as you can see, is a physics-based shuffling. As the tiles move, they will change their elemental associations. And so during this part, you'd keep the question in mind. In our case, what does the world need to know about Twitter in 2023? And when you feel that the chart is ready, in the same way that shuffling your tarot cards or um, picking tiles out of a bag or whatever other form of sortilege you use. Once you get that sort of click of this chart is ready, then press the space bar and a chart will be formed.
Okay, so we got this chart now, and Trey and I are going to take a stab at interpreting it. Um, Again, the question is, what does the world need to know about Twitter in 2023? Inquiring minds all want to know. There's a couple of different ways you can interpret a spread like this. So we're just going to kind of go over the major ways we've been approaching it. The first thing is we start off in the center cluster of 4 tiles. So here you can see Trey is clicking on them, and that'll highlight them and tell you where that tiles matches. So we've got the human, sort of our iconic human figure. Makes sense with Twitter to me. Notice that the figure is yellow for air, so it's very verbal. And then it's in a context of fire in the background. It's red.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that sounds like Twitter to me. I don't know.
People on fire. Also note
People.
that it's paired up with Hazard, which feels spot on. Good job,
Right.
Mosaic.
Not different.
Yeah. Another thing that's probably worth pointing out before we dig too far into this chart as well is that I think our experience with Mosaic charts is that there's a lot going on in every chart, and it's sort of like a full Lenormand tableau every time. So there's a lot there, and charts tend to be something I think that in Mosaic that you can cast, sort of take your first pass at, and then come back and review again. They're kind of a gift that keeps on giving. I don't know, Heather, would you say that that's true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'll come back to a chart like the next day or a couple days later and see new things and make connections that I just didn't at the time of the casting. So if you want a super fast answer to something, this is probably not the immediate go-to, although there's ways you could do that. This is really a good slow burn, slow unfolding divination system.
So, as Heather mentioned, we start with sort of the center tile, and there's 4 images here. And the method that we've been using to interpret charts is there's an arrow of time moving from left to right. So you can think of it as future is in the right, past is in the left, or that time incoming from the right and passing out from the left, if that makes sense. I don't know. Anything you want to add to that, Heather?
No, and because we're looking at sort of a future prediction with this, I would say that we're looking at the year holistically, but you can still sort of block it in the same way as you have earlier in 2023, towards the end of 2023, for example.
Yeah, as you move further towards the edge of the chart.
Yeah.
And then, so we have a kind of in this heading into the future position, we have the human, and then in the past, we have the spider. I think this one is really interesting because we also have spider and anchor, which is giving me
Yeah.
very much a web, um, you know, sort of vibe.
Yeah.
And then the way that we treat above and below is I've been using the metaphor of a tree. I don't know, Heather, if you like have a different interpretation on this, but that the parts that are below are sort of the things that are maybe below the surface or not easily visible, but are either feeding or nourishing the situation, or potentially are where the uh, toxins are being absorbed. Possibly in this particular case, and then in the top you have the things that are a little bit more obvious, and also if there is any sort of fruit uh, to be born out of the reading in relation to the question. This is where you might see it, or the very visible and obvious things, or also things that hang over the situation, or kind of, I don't know, pushing down on it. I don't know, Heather, help
Yeah.
me out here.
No, absolutely. And I was going to say, when I'm doing divinations that are spirit related, a lot of times I'll break it up into celestial and chthonic. But in a case like this, I think because we're asking about a public company, I think that the sort of branches of the tree definitely reflect sort of public appearances, things that maybe are in the news, and then what's below that are things that are happening, within the company internally or underground, or things that are maybe not visible to the public eye.
So the other thing that's interesting about Mosaic is that you get these sort of narrative threads with looking at what tiles match with what other tiles. So we have the human in the center here, matched with the hazard symbol. And then we have the hazard symbol matched with the gun symbol. And then we have the gun symbol matched with the
Does not
ghost
look good.
matched with the magic wand. And then the magic wand, you can see down here at the bottom of the chart, heads off the chart. And the way that I look at this is, that's sort of where the story ends for the scope of the question that you're asking. This is, the boundary of the chart is kind of the boundary of the question. So there might be more that you can tease out of, sort of past where this wand is going off the bottom of the screen, but that would be another chart that you would have to cast.
Right. And just taking a stab at an interpretation of the story, I mean, this looks like perhaps some of the efforts to not have so many safety controls on Twitter is going to not only lead to a lot of social danger and vitriol, but potentially even violence, which is pretty scary. But
Yeah,
wouldn't be the first time.
would not be the first time. I think it's also interesting here that so the gun being this like rapid moment of irreversible change. Sort of the Tower from Tarot kind of vibe of just this kind of like, it ends, it stops, or it takes a really hard right turn that is irreversible or irrevocable. Um, Paired up with the ghost, though, so the ghost can literally mean a ghost, obviously. Look out for this one if you're asking about hauntings. But also, it can be a sort of a long fading away, or a feeling like something is just lingering on but can't die fully, which I think could be apropos in the case of Twitter. Uh, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the one thing that makes me think that it probably has more to do with that than maybe actual like literal violence is the fact that the gun is blue, which is associated with water or sort of emotional settings. Um, uh, well, although now I'm convincing myself again that it's about violence because the background is green, which is very material and earth based. But the fact that the ghost is associated with air and cerebral, verbal things does make me think that it's, yeah, hopefully you're great.
I mean, why not both, right? Unfortunately.
Yes, and
Yes, and as is often the case. So one other thing that is probably worth pointing out now that we're already sort of into the interpretation of the chart, which is that Mosaic includes its own little white book. It is a starting points, much like how we're walking through this chart, is a starting point for you to begin to interact with it. The little white book that is included are descriptions of the iconography in a super simplified way. So just some keywords to basically give you a place to start. If you have your own pings or your own interpretations or your own background that leads you to feel something different about these images, definitely go with your sort of gut feel on this stuff. But it is here. There's a little arrow on the right-hand side of the application. And if you have multiple things selected, like we do here, you'll see at the top that you have the selection in the order in which it was selected. So hazard to handgun to ghost to wand. And then we have some brief descriptions here. Hazard being warning, disease, beware, difficulties ahead, toxicity. How perfect is that in this reading?
Right.
Handgun, turning point, point of no return, killing, defense, hunting, war. Ghost, literal ghost, fading away, unable to meaningfully affect the situation. Spirit contact. Also, I hear Easel in the background.
I know.
We heard my dog Doc in the background earlier.
This is going to be all the dogs.
And then we have an ending in the wand, which actually we didn't talk about this. Elemental fire, the south, willpower, passion, force, which is an interesting way to end this particular thread. It does make me actually want to cast another chart about this question, because that's a real cliffhanger sort of answer to this. We should also talk about this. There's two different ways that you can look at the chain as coming from the center tiles. So you can look at the tiles as they're matched up. So in this case, we have the human tile matched up with the hazard tile, or the human image matched up with the hazard image. But you can also look at an alternate timeline sort of scenario, or for just extra information on the thread. I think it's sort of I look at it as kind of like a secondary thread, which is we can look at what's paired with our person tile, and what's paired with our person tile is a people tile,
Right.
and then the book, and then the anchor back to the spider. Oh, this is perfect.
Right. Oh, so cool.
So sometimes you get these cyclical graphs, which I think are really interesting to talk about and to parse out.
Yeah. It's funny because I was thinking about the spider in relation to, like like the web, obviously.
Yeah.
And also anchors in terms of, I always think about anchors and HTML pages, but
yeah, exactly. Well, that's what links up to the book here, which I
I
think is the
know.
book, people, like person, and then toxicity.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting because with this cycle here, it almost feels like person here might actually be Elon Musk.
I was just starting to wonder that. Yeah. That would make
So
sense between the air and the fire too. That seems very apropos.
yeah, and with sort of I think with the people tile, so it's probably worth pointing out that we have both the person and the people tile. Person, often being an indicator of an individual person or a single human, and the people tile being, or the people image being, sort of a large group of people. So I don't
Right.
know. I think this could be talking about layoffs and firings, or it could be
Yeah.
talking about because it's coming up sort of cyclically, both the future and the past, because it's kind of wrapping together. It also feels like a little bit of a loop,
Yeah.
a little bit of a
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day.
It's definitely sort of confirming or sort of reinforcing like what's already happened in 2022, that he's basically causing some disruption, in his human resources base, and
Yeah.
that's gonna. I mean, look, the spider's gonna get him. It's literally gonna bite him in the butt. Basically.
Yeah, the spider here is really interesting too, because the spider is can also be it is that sort of like the web, the communication, But it can also be the work that you do ahead of time to sort of the work that you do to plan for the future, basically. What web do you cast in order to, catch your future food, basically.
Right.
Um, so
And also fate patterns too, and the fact that like our actions
absolutely.
intersect with those. Yeah.
Uh, okay, well, maybe not spending too much more time on that. Let's talk about the above and below, which I think will be a little bit interesting as well. So above, we have the wall paired with the raven, and the raven with the knot. And then the alternate narrative that we have is the handcuffs. Hmm.
Yeah. Do you think his shareholders are going to revolt?
Something is definitely something is definitely blocked. The raven here is super interesting though.
Yeah.
Um, I like that you added liminal transgressions to
It
the
was
raven.
like I
I
was
think.
thinking about this reading. And also like both the Raven and the Knot have an earth background to them.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, with the raven being earth foreground as well. A lot of earth and
Hmm.
air happening in this chain.
Do you think he's done do you ever wonder if he's done something like really super shady and illegal somewhere? Like maybe that's gonna catch him. I don't know. It's kind of got that vibe. I might be
Yeah,
thinking too much about like crypto right now. Complaining
yeah.
about.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting observation because we have like in the alternate timeline we have the handcuffs, and in this kind of like in the primary one we have this knot, and
Yeah.
it does feel like it's all bound up. Like there's and it's bound up on the other side of this block. Like
Yeah.
something is blocking like the untangling of the mess that is Twitter, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and if we use that public and private metaphor between the top half of the tree and the bottom half, it could be that like all of the stuff that's happening at that sort of ground plane is being obfuscated from public view, potentially to the public's detriment. If the raven is sort of like our ability to kind of gather information and insight and draw insights from it, we're sort of being blocked off from that through the rope and the handcuffs too.
oh, I really like that. No, I think that's spot on. Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, yeah, nice. It's very that wall here is definitely like it's the blocking of information or the sharing of like there's something going on that should be public. It should be in that this top of the tree, but it's being cut off or being blocked in some way, and it has very much to do with sort of legal uh,
Mm,
issues related to the handcuffs and also the knot being sort of things that I mean with both of those things together it's
yeah,
very much about like legal entanglings or things that need like that can't be unwound from each other.
yeah. Ooh.
Ooh,
What's going to happen next, Mr. Hendrick?
I don't know. Okay, so below, interestingly, we have the mushrooms, which go right off the screen for the
Yeah.
sort of alternate, and then they connect to the TV and to the cauldron.
Huh. Who are both fire. That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, what do you make of the
Whoa.
cauldron here?
Oh man.
This is so
Um,
this is so um, magical and organic in this
yeah.
bottom section, which kind of makes no sense to me in the context of the question.
Yeah. I was just trying to think about that.
I mean, the mushrooms can be sort of decomposing or like utilizing um, utilizing the trash, utilizing the garbage in a way
Yeah.
to sort of transforming it into something new. Um,
Do you think this is about Mastodon? That it's like it's gonna like propel Mastodon and like alternatives to Twitter into something? Maybe we should check the little white book.
yeah, what does the little white book say about this? So We have
right?
mushrooms, composting, physical and magical, transforming, hidden support, entheogens, mystical work, the fairy. For the TV, we have passiveness, being programmed,
Mm.
mediating experiences, spin, lies. I
Ooh,
forgot. I'm glad that we put the little white book in here.
I know.
I forgot about some of these things with the TV. I don't think the TV comes up very often in charts for me.
No, yeah,
Um,
me neither.
and then the cauldron, of course, transmutation,
Yeah,
alchemy, also cooking, potentially.
yeah. Oh gosh, so like maybe this is a QAnon thing, actually.
Yeah, conspiracies, like, um, yeah, that TV in there
Entheogens,
is really interesting.
basically. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, this one's an interesting one. So, I mean, going back to our earlier point, this is one where you might, take an initial sort of stab and just kind of take the impression of it, and then come back to it after a little bit
Mhm.
of time and sort of say like, oh yeah, like that's really interesting. There's another layer to these combinations. Sometimes it's actually fairly rare. I modeled all of this out. Uh, a tile will match with its other half. So, for example, we have this person tile, which we've already covered quite thoroughly. The other half of the person tile might have been in this position of where the hazard is. And when this happens and you get this match with another pair, and you could even have multiple matches, in fact, there's a couple different things to think about when that happens. So these are obviously important parts of the chart. It's kind of like getting a major arcana card in tarot. So they're definitely something to look at. If they are in one of these chains, then it's something that is directly associated with the question, or is sort of in the expected either timeline or in sort of what's coming up from below, or what is bearing fruit. But if it's not in one of those chains, then it can be something that is really important, but isn't expected, is outside the sort of normal chain. It's going to be something that comes in sideways, or something that disrupts, something that you need to be aware of in the context of that question.
Yeah. Yeah, and, that disruption can be it's not necessarily negative, it could be something really wonderful, but it's something that, either isn't inherently part of your question or, is something that's so outside of the realm of something that you would be looking for in a spread that it's calling attention to itself.
Mosaic will outline those matched tiles as well. So you'll get a little white outline for those tiles, just to make it a little bit easier to visually identify them.
Yeah. Trey, do you think at the end of, 2023, we should revisit this and, like, analyze our predictions?
Well, I don't know that we've really gotten like a like an actual prediction, but I think in the context of our question, our question was, what does the world need to know about Twitter in 2023? And so I think we've actually covered that reasonably well. You need
Yeah,
to know that there's going to be a lot of toxicity, possibly
yeah,
related to violence, but hopefully not,
yeah.
and possibly related to a something that is that a moment that things change drastically for the company, and
Yeah.
then a fading away, with this ellipses, sort of, and what comes next? Where
Yeah,
does it all go?
to the crapper, probably. Or not.
Or not? Who can say?
Who could say?
Um, yeah, maybe it's a significant turnaround in some way. I don't know. We'll just have to
Yeah.
wait and see.
Yeah.
We hope that you enjoyed the video. You can download Mosaic today. It runs on every major desktop operating system. So there's no mobile version of this yet, but that might be something that we do down the road. So it runs on Mac. There's a universal Mac build. It runs on Windows, and it runs on Linux. And there'll be instructions for downloading it and installing it at the website, which is mosaicdivination.com. That's all one word. mosaicdivinatation.com. Anything else?
Thanks for listening. Appreciate ya.
Yeah, we appreciate you.